Welcome to the Ad Nauseam podcast, where classical gourmands everywhere can finally get their fill. Join us for a delectable discussion of Greco-Roman civilization stretching from the Minoans and Mycenaeans through the Renaissance and right down to the present. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here are your hosts, Dr. David Noe and Dr. Jeff Winkle.
Welcome, Ad Nauseam listeners, to episode 177 of our humble little podcast. I am, as always, Dr. Jeffrey T. Winkle, here down in Vomitorium Central, our Parnassus.
That's right.
With my good friend, Dr. David C. Noe. How you doing, Dave?
We're going to do some navel gazing, right?
Navel gazing?
Yeah, you
exactly.
like to say it's the omphalos, right?
That's right.
The belly button of the world, which is clearly an outie.
Yeah.
If you've ever been to Delphi, as I know you have, and
have.
See that big lump inscribed with pomegranates.
Right. And they have that on site, they have just the big plain one. Just
That's right.
Your generic omphalos.
That's right.
Yeah.
How come when people get tattoos, they don't get, pomegranates tattooed around their navel? That would be an inside joke, wouldn't it?
It would be. Maybe a little bit too inside.
Too inside? All right. What does the T stand for in the Jeffrey T. Winkle?
Tenacious.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tenacious J.
Tenacious. Yeah, exactly.
All right.
How about the C? Do you got something for yourself?
What
there?
does the C in David C. Noe stand for? I don't know. Clumsy?
Clumsy? Really?
I'm tripping over my words today.
Oh, man.
Do you know what onomastics is?
Onomastics.
Yeah, the study and
of names?
Of naming, right. It's
Yeah.
the art and science of naming.
Yeah.
And there's probably no future for me in this, but here's something.
Okay.
It occurred to me the other day that if someone wanted to come up with a sugar substitute, you know what these are, right? In your Diet Coke there,
Like
and
your
so forth.
Splenda?
Yeah, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And you wanted to market it, playing off of kind of an R&B vibe.
Yeah.
The ideal name would be Stevie O Wonder.
Oh, man. Oh, that's good.
Is there any
Good.
Is there any future in that?
Stevie Wonder, right.
I mean, the rest of the ad just writes itself.
Exactly.
doesn't
You could have a blind taste test.
There you go. That's right. I just called to lower your calories. So, Jeff, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm feeling good. As we exchanged messages yesterday, it was amongst the smarchiest of days yesterday, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. It was hailing and rain, and there were giant snowflakes that froze and then thawed and then refroze before they collided with Mother Earth. And you had to send me a little message to say it's really smarchy out there.
It was so smarchy.
The smarchiest.
Right. So my youngest son, who is my outdoorsy guy.
Okay.
So he just spring and summer, he's outside all the time. And so these last, a few days ago when it was his 70s, he's out there in his shorts having the time of his life. And he walked outside yesterday expecting the same, and he shook his fist at the heavens.
Oh, so he went outside in shorts kind of attire because he was ready for the spring to get going.
Exactly. He assumed, well, hey, I had to sit him down. Listen, son, you've been a Michigander for 11 years. This time just accept.
But it was 75 degrees on Friday.
But you know how...
Can you blame the kid?
You know how Smarch works.
Yeah, I do.
These jolting turns.
That's right.
Takes. So he was so upset about that and about the kind of the frost covering the car this morning.
Yeah. Well, you know the old expression, March comes in like a lamb and out like a lion.
Yeah. So are we tipped into the...
I think we're headed to the lion part.
Exactly right.
But say once we get into early April, and all of our many devoted listeners in the warmer climes of, say, Pasadena, California, and Texas, the hill country of Texas, and down in Florida and so forth, they have no sympathy for what we're going through.
No, absolutely not. Right.
But once we get into April, then we will have warmer horizons to greet us.
Yes. I would like to just give one quick
Please.
Unsolicited shout out.
Okay.
So we've actually given her a shout out on the
would this be Kelly?
Yes, right. So speaking of someone who lives in warmer climes, she lives down there in Florida.
Right.
But the day we're recording this, the 17th, is her birthday.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So this is like she's Florida woman? Is that the...
She's Florida woman.
Okay.
Exactly right.
Does she ever tangle with alligators or...
Oh, she actually has stories about alligators in her backyard, that kind of stuff.
One of the things I love about Florida is the gator jerky.
Oh, really?
You ever eaten that or seen that?
I have not.
When tooling along the expressway, and The billboards are up there. Stop at this or that citrus stand and get some gator jerky.
Wow. Right. So we're
take
like
the alligator.
Northern Michigan, you might get a blueberry pie.
I suppose.
Down there, you get
a piece of alligator meat.
Yeah.
That has been, I don't know, smoked and jerked.
Yeah, that sounds good.
It's not so bad.
Low carb.
I suppose that's true. Yeah.
Well, I want to
put a little sweetener on it. Should we go in that direction again?
No, maybe not. But I wanted to say happy birthday.
Yeah. All right, Kelly, happy
friend.
birthday.
Yes.
Yeah, we could throw her some Latin. Felicissimum tibi sit Natale.
Indeed.
Have a very lovely birthday.
Yeah. Dave, what are we talking about today?
We're going to go back and we're going to back Trachis, and we're going to look at the women of Trachis, the Trachiniae, a little appreciated and underappreciated play of Sophocles.
Yes. And Dave, right before we were on mic, you had this book in your hand.
I do.
Which is clear evidence of kind of how this play has kind of fallen through the cracks.
That's correct.
You want to share a bit about that?
Yeah, so this is a very famous book by the late Bernard Knox, or Bernard M.W. Knox, which he wrote a book called something like The Last Dead White European Males. I read it. I can't remember the exact title. But Bernard Knox was a great classicist of the 20th century.
Right. In fact, I think his introduction, I think his Tefagel's translation of the Iliad is worth the price of the book alone.
Even if you didn't get the translation, you're saying, if you just got his introduction.
It's fantastic, yes.
Yeah, so this is his work, The Heroic Temper. And I used to assign this in class. It's a little bit challenging reading for an undergrad maybe, but there's just one jewel after another of tragidic interpretation. So this is 1964 University of California Press. And he's talking about the different kinds of heroes in the three tragedians. And he says, it is no accident, page 42, it is no accident that the plays of Sophocles contain so many suicides. In all the 7 plays of Aeschylus which have been preserved, there is not one, though the suppliants threatened suicide, and Ajax, in a lost play, certainly committed it. In all the surviving plays of Euripides, what are there, something like 17 of Euripides?
Yeah, 17 or 18, yeah.
In all the surviving plays of Euripides, there are only 4. But in the 7 plays of Sophocles, there are no less than 6. Ajax, Antigone, Hymen, Eurydice, Deianira, and Jocasta. And in addition, Philoctetes attempts suicide on stage, Oedipus Tyrannos asks for a sword to kill himself, and Oedipus at Colonus prays for death in the opening scene of the play and goes swiftly and joyfully to it at the end.
Yeah.
The world as it is, life as it is lived, refuses them freedom to be what they are, and they are ready to leave it rather than to change, says Knox.
Wow.
So what got us into this point here, I mean, I think it's a great quote, honestly.
It's a fantastic quote, yes.
But what got us in here is I was looking through the index to see, well, what does Knox say about the Trachiniae? And so I just looked for the name Deianira. This is the only place in the body of the text, 180-some pages, where Knox mentions the character of Deianira.
Wow.
He mentions her once in the footnote, but that's it. In the entire book.
So for all intents and purposes, he doesn't really cover this play at all.
No, he gives it really no attention.
Right. And so, well, yes, of course, Deianira, she does exit the stage via suicide in this play. But yeah, that's
spoiler alert. Right?
Yeah, right. But that's clear evidence. Evidence of one.
Right.
But here you have a major scholar writing about Sophoclean tragedy, and he basically says, well, I'm not gonna even tackle this one.
Right.
Yeah.
Like your graduate school professor, right?
Yes. Said nobody reads it.
Nobody reads it. Nobody reads the Trachiniae. Thankfully, we have a wonderful translation.
We do.
Courtesy of Hackett, and this would be the translation of Meinke and Woodruff.
Yes.
So we dealt with it last time, and today we're going to take a deeper look at some of the actual plot lines and what it all means.
Yes. And speaking of Deianira,
yes,
my sense is that critics, readers, audience members' appreciation of this play kind of hinges around either you like it or you hate it. It hinges around how you see her.
Okay.
Do you see her as kind of a weak wallflower, or do you see her as a 3-dimensional, full-blown, complex, tragic character?
And maybe even the villainess?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Who succeeds in killing her husband for his infidelity, but does so in such a way that she can maintain a facade of innocence.
Right.
If I remember last time, you took the position that she really did it in ignorance and without malice aforethought.
That's how it struck me on my first reading.
Are you still in that spot?
Well, I reread the play over the weekend.
Right.
And I'm more sympathetic to seeing her kind of in a more nuanced kind of way. So maybe there is more to her. This idea that, well, she was taking kind of a preemptive revenge.
Okay.
But in some ways, I like that interpretation better because I think that makes the play more interesting. Because I do find her, by and large, the way the speeches that she makes, the way people respond to her is very sympathetic.
Yeah. Should we start with the very opening of the play?
Yes, let's do this. Yep.
Okay. So the scene, as we're given it in the Minky Woodruff translation, is the stage shows the front of the house in Trachis, where Deianira and her family are living as guests. In the center are two great doors leading into the house. The time is early morning. Then there are stage directions given by the editors, which are very nice. Enter Deianira through the great doors, followed by the nurse. Now, Deianira and the nurse are going to have their stichomythia, right? Their back and forth kind of dialogue.
Yes.
And how does Deianira begin the play, Jeff?
Right. So she says, "People say, and they have been repeating this for ages, that you'll never know for sure whether your life is good or bad until it ends in death." That's a by the time Sophocles writes this is a Greek axiom.
Yeah,
right?
it's a truism.
Yep.
It's in Herodotus. It's elsewhere in Sophocles, obviously.
Yeah. "That's the human way, but not for me, not for my life. No need to go down to Hades. I know it now. My life is heavy with the weight of sorrow. Even when I was still living in father's house, he was Oeneus, we lived in Pleuron, I was tormented by a courtship as nasty as any woman's in Eiole. I was solicited by a river called Eiole. He came in 3 forms to ask for me from father. He kept showing up as a bull, but at other times a snake would wriggle in, writhing, and that would be him. Or he'd wear a man's belly and a bull's face."
That's the worst of all, isn't
Man,
it?
I don't think
Man's belly and a bull's face?
that's horrifying.
Yeah.
"His beard was a dark tangle spurting out torrents of fresh water. To be stalked by a suitor like that, I felt trapped and miserable. So I prayed every day that I might die before I ever had to go to bed with him. But eventually, to my delight, there came a famous man, the son of Zeus and Alcmene, who took him on, fought him, won the contest, set me free. How he brought this labor off, I cannot say. Find a beggar at the hearth, anyone who was there and who was not paralyzed with fear, he'll tell the tale. But I was terror-stricken. I was afraid that my beauty would someday be a source of pain. But the end of the contest, thanks to Zeus, was lovely. Well, it seemed lovely. Now I am yoked to Heracles as his chosen bedmate, and I feed fear upon fear for him in constant anxiety." I'll stop it there. So she's already in these first 20, 30 lines. She's already kind of riding a roller coaster of horror and love and kind of back and forth. And that's in some ways indicative of her character throughout this play, kind of yanked back and forth between hope and despair.
And of course, the very common theme that the blessings of the gods only require a little bit of a push, and they become the opposite. They become a curse.
Yeah.
Namely, her great beauty, right?
Yes.
It's very similar to the way that Helen in the Euripides play talks about her beauty, right? And how it's really not as great as you might think.
Right.
You know, to be the most beautiful woman in the world. It gets you a kind of unwanted attention, and it's more of a prison than it is a gift from the gods.
Indeed. Yeah, I think that's a universal theme. But this idea of fading beauty, right, as also a cross that the women have to bear. I mean, this is very much that in Deianira's worry, as this other captive woman, and she hears stories about this is who Heracles really wants.
Yeah, Eiole.
She's very worried about this. It struck me as that I think I mentioned we were talking last time about. I think there are shades of Penelope and Telemachus in this story, but Deianira and Hylas too, awaiting for a husband, a father who's been gone a long time to come home. That seems like a ready correlation.
Right.
But I just got finished doing the Odyssey with one of my myth sections, and Penelope's beauty is as far as I can tell, she does not worry about her beauty kind of fading with her age, right?
Not really at all.
She can still make the younger suitors stumble and fall whenever she walks into the room. And that doesn't seem to be kind of a part of her story.
Yes, it's a strange thing because I was always struck by Odysseus' attitude when he finally meets up with Penelope. He says something along the lines of, or maybe it's when he's leaving Calypso. He says, "Yes, you're a goddess, and obviously no mortal woman, you're a nymph. No mortal woman can compare to you. But at the end of the day, I really just want my wife."
Right. Yeah.
It's kind of a counter to supposed chauvinism and misogyny that Odysseus displays.
Right. Yeah.
He's really not just in it for, the best looking woman.
Yeah, I mean, there might also be an aspect of kind of mortal versus immortal in those stories, because you do have those traditions, say with Cassandra.
Right.
Apollo sees her, wants her, and she realizes that he's going to stay young and beautiful forever, and she's going to get old, and he will tire of her.
Right.
There's a number of stories like that, which seem to kind of play into that. The gods, these young and always beautiful male gods, are very chauvinistic because they possess that beauty that never fades.
Right.
But from Odysseus' point of view, so
you're saying he realizes he's going to get old also?
Yes, right. And so they're both kind of bound to this mortal coil.
He wants to be equally matched.
Right. Yes, exactly. But I mean, he should also mention that he does spend 7 years with Calypso and 1 year with Circe.
Right.
So yeah, all things in balance.
So Heracles, as opposed to Odysseus, Heracles in this play, we haven't really talked about his character, and we will eventually.
Right.
But he's, to me, the big unknown in this play. What should we make of him?
Right. And I think that's one of the things I really liked about this play is that Sophocles saves the appearance of Heracles to the very end, where he's already on his deathbed. And it's not a flattering portrayal of him at all.
And his great act of heroism is simply to stoically suffer through the pain without revealing how much it hurts.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, unlike so many of his other heroic exploits, doesn't benefit anybody else. It's not like the various civilization-making victories that he wins.
Right.
He saves Arcadia from all these marauding animals. Here, the great heroic exploit is just, I'm not going to let anybody see how much I'm hurting.
I'm hurting, right. Although, I mean, you could also argue with, these civilization saving exploits, they're also primarily in service to kind of absolve him of his blood guilt.
That's true.
Right? So it's a secondary benefit.
That's true.
But even at the end of the play, he's complaining about, why do I deserve this? Look at everything I did for humanity, and this is how I end up. Yeah.
Right. So you have an opening quote, Jeff.
I do, yes.
And I think it's not too late for an opening quote. We had that little bit from Knox, but this is too good to pass over.
Yeah. So this is from an article called Deianira's Guilt from the year 2000. From Transactions of the American Philological Association.
TEPA.
TEPA. And this comes from one Edwin Carawan.
Carawan with a W?
With a W.
So it's spelled just like caravan, but it's unvoiced.
It is.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes. And he begins this article with a quote from one of the legendary philologists, Wilamowitz.
Oh, yes.
Tycho von Wilamowitz Moellendorff is his full name. And he writes in this quote, "Everyone already knows the story and understands from the beginning what she, Deianira, will do, and that she thereby wreaks the greatest ruin utterly without blame."
Ah. Right. So, Wilamowitz's take is that she is an innocent dupe.
She's an innocent dupe.
She has just been tricked by Nessus, the centaur, even though this is 20 years later, maybe?
Yeah.
But how does that salvage Deianira's character in any way, her reputation? She's either a murderous, wicked woman who kills her husband, or she's an idiot, right?
Right.
Aren't those kind of the options?
Right. I think even on the previous episode, you were saying, like, how could she be that naive?
Right.
And I think one of the weak plot points is how she comes to realize this mistake that she's made, but doesn't realize it at the time that she's making it. And she almost like slaps herself in the head and says, how could I be so stupid? Well, yeah, that's the question. But let me continue with Carawan's text. He writes, "The protagonist of Trachiniae is virtually fixed in modern interpretation as the long-suffering housewife who meant no harm. In this regard, Tycho's, Wilamowitz's, assumption is shared by most scholars. Sophocles' Deianira is guiltless from the outset, for she slays Heracles unwittingly by the wiles of Nessus and not by her own intent. Wilamowitz himself assumed that Deianira was the innocent was well known to an ancient audience long before Sophocles elevated her from bystander to protagonist. More recently, scholars have argued that Sophocles invented Deianira's innocence. She was known from saga as a vindictive murderess, and that the character in Trachiniae reversed the expectations of the audience. By either theory, Sophocles' Deianira is an innocent victim of schemes that others devised. This at least is given that everyone knows. Whatever Sophocles has done to shape the story, his protagonist remains a blameless instrument of the god's impenetrable design." So he seems to ultimately kind of come around to, well, I agree.
Right.
She is she's a puppet.
But the closing portion of the quote that you read, in which Carawan says that she's a blameless instrument of the god's design, That's counter to what you said last week, in that you were pointing out the fact when something terrible is committed, even without intent, the Greek character is held responsible based on the wicked nature of the action, not so much based on the intent.
Yeah, well, I especially see that in Sophocles, where in the gods in Sophocles are almost always removed, right? They speak through oracles, they speak through signs. No deity shows up in this particular play.
That's right.
And so I think it's easier to affix blame to human characters because you don't see the gods pulling the puppet strings in this obvious kind of way. But you're right. I mean even Heracles within this play, right? The tradition is that he kills his family under the influence of Hera.
Right.
He's still got to pay for it.
That's right. Even though he was driven mad. So then after the exchange between Deianira and the nurse, then the son Hylas comes in.
Yes.
Whom you see as kind of a Telemachus character.
Right.
Waiting at home with Deianira for the return of his father, whom he's never met.
Right. Exactly. And he seems, I didn't care much for this character.
No?
He seems to be a bit of a cipher, just kind of reflecting his mother's emotions at the beginning of the play and then reflecting Heracles' emotions at the end of the play. Although he does come to a kind of a last-minute defense of his mother at the end of the play, where he comes around and tries to convince Heracles before he dies is that, mom didn't mean it.
Right.
Yeah.
Innocent.
Right. So, yes, but structurally, he's the son that's never really known his father that well.
Right? And when he enters the scene, it's right after this exchange with the nurse, and his first words are to Deianira. She says, "My son, oh my child, I see that fine words can drop from the lips of a woman who was born to low rank." She's speaking of the nurse. She is a slave, but she speaks as well as someone who is free. "What did she say?" says Hylas. "Tell me, if it can be told. Your father's been abroad so long, and you haven't been out asking where he is. That brings you shame." So the first note is that Hylas is the anti-Telemachus.
That's true.
Because Telemachus was very keen to meet his dad.
Right.
And Athena,
obsessed with it.
And Athena inspired him, to go to Sparta and to meet with Nestor and take along his friend Pisistratus and try to find where his dad. Hylas is sitting at home, not all that interested, I guess.
Right, not asking any questions.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that struck me about the early part of this play is about, and even between Deianira and Hylas, they don't seem to talk that much.
No.
Deianira, very soon after these lines will drop on him, "Oh yeah, Heracles left this oracle behind. Do you want to hear it?" And Hylas says, "What? Oracle?
Right.
Like this has never come up?"
Right, in all those years.
Right. I mean, I don't know if I'm kind of imposing, modern expectations of how a family should function, but they do seem much more disconnected from each other than Penelope and Telemachus do in Homer.
Yeah, which is the domestic scene par excellence that would shape all of the Greeks' understanding of tragedy, I would imagine.
I would think so too. Yeah.
It's the backdrop against which they would measure these things.
Right.
So on page 72 of the text, we have the messenger come in. And of course, the messenger role in Greek tragedy is always to break news. And it's interesting that usually, the messenger is always anonymous, but they typically advance the plot the most. Can you read what's going on there at the top of that page?
Yes. The messenger says, "My lady Deianira, I am the first to bring the news that will set you free from fear. Alcmene's son," that's Heracles, "is alive. Believe me, he won his battle, and now he's giving first fruits of his victory to the local gods."
Right.
And Deianira says, "What's this, old man? What are you telling me? He'll be home right away, your wonderful husband. You'll see him in all his triumphant power." Now, another thing I found really quite striking about this play is, when the messenger first showed up, I said, "Oh, yeah, I recognize this."
Right.
You keep a lot of the physical action off stage, and the messenger comes in and gives the story. But then this character of Lycas shows up, and he is Heracles' personal messenger and herald. And so you have these competing messengers that are arguing with each other about who's giving the truest report. I thought that was really striking.
Almost Euripidean.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, so much of, I think we mentioned this last time too, is so much of this play, I'm wondering, this sounds so much more like Euripides than does Sophocles.
Questions about the reliability of messengers and what is the truth and can we find it and hold on to it.
A focus on women's experience.
Correct.
Right? Yeah. All right, so before we get into this disagreement between the messenger and Lycas, I did want to talk about this prophecy. So Deianira says to her son, your dad left this prophecy behind. Do you want to hear it? And he said, "What does this tell me?" This, and she actually gives two different versions of it. And so this is on page 71 of the play, where she tells Hylas, says, when Heracles, set out from home, he left in the house an old tablet inscribed with a prophecy that he hadn't dared to give me before when he went on all those adventures. Because, he explained, he was sure he'd perform his task and then slither out of danger and not die. But this time, as if his life was over, he told me how much property I should take as his wife and told me what shares of land he'd give his sons. And he specified a time. Wait 3 months and 1 year of his life after he left this land, and then he was due to die precisely at that time, unless he had slipped past the end of the term, in which case he'd live the rest of his life in comfort. So if
that's confusing.
It is very confusing. So if you do the math, the year and 3 months,
right?
That's kind of roughly we learned that's how long Heracles has been gone. And so the prophecy is, okay, if it's going to come true, it's going to come true now.
So just to make sure, Jeff, that I'm following you here,
yes.
Here's Deianira revealing to her son Hylas the prophecy that Heracles told her before he left.
Yes.
And it was this: if I live, what is it again?
It says that that if I'm going to die,
right,
it's going to be 3 months, a year and 3 months.
1 year and 3 months, 15 months,
right,
after I leave.
Unless, he says, I escape the trap once again.
Okay.
So I thought this was also fascinating because usually the rule of oracles is that an oracle pronounced must come true. They don't usually have kind of an escape clause.
No,
like
it's not a choose your own ending kind of oracle.
It's not like the right. It's not like the oracle to Oedipus,
right,
where the oracle says, "You are the man who will kill his father and marry his mother,"
unless you can figure out some way to get out of it.
Right. And so this kind of gives an escape clause. So I mean, I like this. It really puts Deianira in an even more difficult position.
Yes,
because she says, "Well, that sounds like this could happen imminently." But there's also a chance it won't. And so I think it causes a lot more turmoil for her character in deciding of how to proceed.
Right.
All right. So not long after this figure of Lycos shows up.
Yes.
And he is Heracles' personal messenger herald. And we get this dueling messengers episode. So just like with the messenger, he approaches Deianira. And we learn that he gives a half-true version of what's been going on. So we learn Heracles is close. He's in Malia, which is just down the road.
Right.
But he's apparently besieged with... basically autograph seekers. And he's got to deal with that before he can come home. But Lycos, the herald, shows up first, and he's got these captive women with him. And so Deianira says she wants more information, like what's going on. So Lycos tells Deianira, says, well, you remember Heracles, he killed this guy Iphitus, the son of this king, Eurytus. And he had to go spend a year in Lydia. The gods were upset and kind of made him serve this year of penance before he could come home. And when Lycos tells the story of, what was the problem? Why did he kill this king's son? It was that the king was mocking Heracles for being just an okay archer. Like he says, you're okay, but he says, my sons can shoot better than you. Heracles loses his mind and throws the king's son off a cliff. The messenger...
And for that, he has to do penance.
Yes, exactly. He has to do penance, and now he's kind of back from this year. Well, the messenger hears this, and he says, that's not the true story. That's not why he killed Iphitus. He killed Iphitus because Heracles went to the king, and he was smitten by the king's daughter, this Eiole, who happens to be one of these women that is now appears before Deianira as a captive, a silent character in the play. And so Lycos doesn't want to give away this information that Heracles is actually in love, not just kind of lusting after this girl, but actually wants to make her his legit wife. And so he tells the false story that, Heracles was just upset about this insult. And the messenger comes and tells Deianira, says, no, he's lying.
So two messengers.
Yep.
Lycos and the anonymous messenger.
Yes.
And the anonymous messenger is either loyal to Deianira or at least attached to the house.
Yes.
In some way. But Lycos is Hercules' personal messenger.
Right.
And he comes in this scene and delivers a half-truth.
Yes.
Because he's trying to hide the truth from Deianira.
Yes.
Or maybe Hercules has tasked him with that?
Well, he ultimately does come around to admitting that he lied. So the messenger confronts Lycos and says, Deianira too, said, before you leave, you got to tell me the truth. And he's like, how dare you question me? And he kind of plays rank with the other messenger. And he hems and haws, but finally
is he a union member or something?
Yeah, exactly.
He's been messengering longer.
Right. So, but he finally comes around and says, okay, right. No, the whole thing was about this squabble over this girl. And not only this girl, but it's this very girl that you see in front of you.
Yeah.
Now, yeah.
So, if we could pick it up on page 77.
Please.
Then we have Deianira, right? Who's speaking to this silent woman, Eiole.
Yes.
Who's only described as tall and regal and beautiful and things of that nature.
Right, but she never says a word.
She never gets to speak.
No.
So top of page 77, Deianira says, "You look especially miserable. Who are you? Were you unmarried or a young mother? Surely you were not born to know all this suffering. You're upper class. Lycus, who in the world are her parents? Who was her mother? Who was her father? Tell me. I pity her more than any of the others. She's the only one who really understands."
Right.
That's a really nice touch, isn't it?
It is.
Because here I believe Deianira is expressing a sincere feeling of pity that she has for this woman, Eiole. And it's probably born out of the experience that she shared at the beginning of the play.
Indeed.
When she was suited by Eiole, right? The river.
By man-belly bull guy.
That's right.
Right.
Who would appear to her in various forms.
Yes.
So she's saying it's no fun to be in such a position. But of course, we as the audience know this is her rival.
Yes.
This is the younger woman who's going to supplant her, already has, in Hercules' affections.
Yes. And yeah, a couple of things there. I think that line that she's the only one who really understands. So you have these competing messengers, but this teasing notion that if Eiole would speak,
right,
we would get the real story.
Yes.
We would get a front row seat. And then the second thing I would add is, so when she says these words that you just read, she doesn't fully, Deianira doesn't fully understand who this woman is and what's at stake for her.
Right.
But what's, I think, even more striking is even after she learns, she is still deeply sympathetic with Eiole.
Or pretends to be.
Or pretends to be, right? It reads me as very much in concert with the sentiment here.
Yes.
So even given all of that, the potential violence that this could represent for herself, she still takes pity on her.
Right.
She's a remarkable character.
She is. So then how does Lycus, the messenger, respond right there? I think this is so telling.
Sure. He says, he plays dumb.
Right.
He says, how would I know? Why cross-examine me? I'd guess her parents there had a fairly high rank. Now, we learn later that he knows exactly who this is.
Right. Could she be from the ruling family, says Deianira, putting her finger, right on it. Did Eurytus have a child?
Lycus says, I don't know. I didn't make much of an inquiry.
You didn't even hear her name from the other women on the road?
Not at all. We came through the journey in silence.
Then you tell me, sad girl. I'll hear it from you. It would be a shame for me not to know who you are. And at that point, Lycus interrupts so that Eiole doesn't respond.
Say anything, right? He says, it will be totally different from the way she was before if she so much as parted her lips. Nothing. She has not uttered a single word, large or small. She's always mourning her great loss, crying in misery ever since she left the high winds of her home country. It's a nuisance, but it's bad for her too, and it should be forgiven. I really like the point that you made too, is that reading this against Deianira's own experience of being kind of shuttled off, not just married off, but married off to a monster.
Yes,
right.
Well, and then rescued by Hercules. But see, there's the contrast. Before she had to consummate this horrible match with the river monster, man-belly bullhead guy, Hercules showed up and rescued her. And it was a great honor to be married to, the greatest hero.
Right.
But Eiole, she's in a different position.
Yes.
She's more like the one who was attacked by the river god.
Right.
So does this say that Hercules has changed?
Changed from...
Well, in the other story, at the beginning in Deianira's mind, he's the rescuer.
Yeah.
Now he's the malefactor. He's the transgressor.
Right. Well, we were talking about how for a beautiful woman sometimes that beauty can be a prison. This also
as not so beautiful men, we were just totally speculating.
Right. Exactly. Right. But this kind of reminds me of the beautiful woman who marries a celebrity. Right.
Yeah.
And then it's all great and wonderful at first, but then you realize that this person is never home. Right. And so Heracles, it's
has complicated shoes.
Lots of complicated shoes. Right. So he's a hero. It's wonderful to be rescued by this man of great renown. But when it comes down to what is life actually like, he's never there. Right. She even compares, and when she talks about Hylas, her son, she says, he's my husband is like a planter who's here one day to plant the seed and doesn't show up again until it's all grown.
Yeah, that's right.
He's seen him like twice in his life.
Right.
Absent father.
Jeff, I'd like to bring in here a quote from Charles Siegel on the nature of the oracles in the play, because I think it's quite illuminating. So Charles Siegel, famous scholar of tragedy, this is his article, The Oracles of Sophocles' Trachiniae, Convergence or Confusion, Harvard Studies in Classical Philology, the year 2000, volume 100. So he says, the Trachiniae resembles both the Tyrannus, Oedipus at Tyrannus, and the Coloneus, or the Coloneus, in the way in which the different oracles converge to reveal the final shape of immortal life in the divine plan. But Trachiniae is closer to the Philoctetes, another Sophoclean play, in that the oracles are unclear and ambiguous and are revealed in their true meaning only at the end.
Right, like we were saying.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
The vagueness and obscurity of these different oracles are calculated to set off the effect of an ultimate convergence in Heracles' flash of tragic understanding that brings together the old and the new prophecies. In order to gain this effect of convergence, Sophocles deliberately blurs the relation among the various oracles. To sum up thus far, there are, says Seagull, 5 oracular statements in the Trachiniae, and Sophocles leaves it vague exactly how they relate to one another. So, Jeff, let's just go through these real quickly. What's the first one?
1, a prophecy written on a tablet mentioned by Deianira in the prologue that involves some terrible woe after Heracles' absence for 15 months.
Okay, so that seems like the most important and maybe the most frightening, right?
Yes.
The second one, an oracle, the same as one that specifies the place, i.e. Evia or Euboea, as the critical element in Heracles' future, whether it's a death or a happy life. So they have the incident, the time, and they have the location. And then what's number 3?
Number 3, Deianira's full statement made to the Trachinian maidens in 154 to 174 of what seems to be the same prophecy. Here, she harks back to the tablet and the 15 months of the prologue, but adds its provenance from Dodona, and specifically mentions death and not just the end of life. So they seem to be getting a little bit more specific as we go along. Okay.
And the fourth one, the chorus in the third stasimon, which is a tragic word for a choral engagement, in the third stasimon, to which we shall presently turn, refers to a similar disjunctive oracle, meaning this or that, but places it 12 years in the past.
Right, that's confusing.
Yes, it is. And then the fifth one?
The fifth one, Heracles near the end combines the oracle from Dodona with an ancient oracle from Zeus that nothing living can kill him. And so that's where he puts the pieces together. It says that from Nessus's blood, the dead centaur ends up killing him.
So here a question arises in my little mind, Jeff, and that is it possible that the Trachiniae has been less successful in audience reception because the will of the gods is less clear? Because one thing about the Oedipus Rex, or the Oedipus Tyrannus, that is so overwhelming is that the nature of the oracle, the prophecy, could not be more clear. And there's a crisp line through the whole play, and it's really just a question of how is it going to be played out in the lives of the characters, and are they, especially Oedipus, going to be able to come to terms with it?
Right.
But here there's quite a bit of confusion.
Yeah.
I guess you got to follow really closely. What are the gods saying?
Right. So as I'm reading this, clearly Seagull presents this as a virtue of the play. Right?
Yes.
It kind of keeps things off balance. But you could also, I think, easily read it as a vice, in that Sophocles' inconsistency is just it's bad writing.
It's
lazy
too
writing. Much
complexity.
Right. And it also struck me too is that I think for a modern audience, being kept off balance and less in the know, we get that. That's part of what makes it interesting. But for an ancient audience, which would have known how the story ends,
right,
would they just have found this
unnecessary?
I don't know.
Very hard to tell.
Very hard to tell. Well, Dave, speaking of unclear oracular statements, it's time for the ads.
Okay, let's do it. This episode of Ad Nauseam is brought to you by the good folks at Hackett Publishing. And not smack it, not whack it, not track it, slack it, etc. But Hackett.
Hackett.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And who are these people, Jeff, and why should anybody care?
They are book publishers that have been in business for 54 years now. They've got offices in Indianapolis, Indiana, Cambridge, Massachusetts, and they are keeping the flame of classics alive in an affordable and attractive and erudite kind of way.
Yes.
Yep. I love their books. I love the artwork. We've used their translations many times. In fact,
including today,
we are using a translation from Hackett of The Women of Trachis, which is collected with, I believe, with 3 other Sophoclean plays. You cannot
Peter Meinke and Paul Woodruff.
Yes,
excellent translation with extensive notes.
You can't beat the quality, and you cannot beat the price. Those of you who are in academia know that how expensive textbooks and any
academic
book can be,
and even some of, if I may, some of the so-called better publishers we won't really mention. I think that the binding they use is that spray adhesive.
Yeah.
Even on the hardcovers, that you shake it, you get it down at the Home Depot or the Lowe's, and you shake the can and you spray it on. Right?
Yeah.
I think that's what they use to put some of their books together.
I would agree with that.
And they cost you $150.
It's ridiculous.
Not Hackett.
Not Hackett. So if you go to hackettpublishing.com, that's HACKETT publishing.com, you will find a wide array of offerings in their catalog, not just from under the banner of classics, although you'll find a ton there, but from Asian studies, philosophy, Islamic studies. Really check it out and do yourself a favor and scroll through it. And we've got a great offer. If you want to purchase something from Hackett, go to that website, and if you type in this coupon code, Dave, you got the coupon code for that?
I do. It is AN, as in ad nauseum, 2025, the current year, AN 2025. Once you have selected some great Hackett books, build your library, right?
Yep.
That old Build-A-Bear kind of thing?
Yes.
This is your build a library kind of thing. Enter that coupon code AN 2025, and Jeff, what does that get them?
That gets them 20% off your entire order and free shipping.
Check it out.
This episode of Ad Nauseam also brought to you by Ratio Coffee. Dave, this morning, Monday morning, tough to get going. I had to get my kids out of the house.
Is today Monday?
Today's Monday.
Okay.
Yep. So we're recording this on a Monday.
That's right. Had to get your kids out of the house.
Yes, they had to be in early. My wife had to go in early. And so I actually had to leave the house this morning without my coffee.
Wow.
But the saving grace was I got to my office.
That's grim.
And there I was. There awaiting me was my Ratio 4.
Wow.
So the first thing I did was brew up a half batch in that machine.
Nice.
Pretty soon I had the perfect cup of coffee in my hands.
Was it?
I was ready to go.
Was it acrid?
It was not
Was
acrid.
it bitter?
It was not bitter.
Was there any of that snackish twang or
Nothing.
anything like that?
No snackish twang. No brackish tang. No trackish bang.
Right.
It was great, and I owe it to the folks at Ratio Coffee. Yep.
Yeah. So not only the 4, but if you want the 6, which would brew for you and Rebecca too, or maybe the 8. Right?
Yep.
Which, you got the flagship, don't you?
Got the flagship at home.
The 8.
Yep.
What is it? Stainless steel with what kind of accents you have?
It's the wood.
Wood.
The nice
Okay.
polished wood accents.
Nice. And the Millennium Falcon of brewers, you might say, sits on your countertop, doesn't take up too much real estate. A beautiful machine.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say the listeners are thinking, I got my books from Hackett. I'm living the classics life. Maybe wearing a cardigan.
Probably.
I see you got the quarter zip over. Is that a quarter zip?
It's a quarter zip. Yes.
Okay.
All it's missing are the patches on the sleeves.
Do you ever put on a cardigan?
I own no cardigans.
I don't own any cardigans either.
No.
In any event, you want to pursue classics, maybe you should go to ratiocoffee.com/adnauseam,
Yep.
ADNAVSEAM. Pick out one of these fantastic machines, put it in your shopping cart, and at checkout, what do they need to enter?
They need to enter this code, AN Ratio 2025.
And that will get them $20 off the machine of their choice.
Indeed. Check it out.
Jeff, as we get back into our analysis of the play, our enjoyment of this fantastic piece of literature, where should we head next?
Just to sum up some of the middle parts here.
Yes.
So Deanira gives this quite moving speech on love, which someone could have taken at face value and saw this as she's kind of up to something. It's interesting that when she talks about kind of love being the puppeteer in all of this, is a suggestion that that's the true God that's behind all of this. It's Aphrodite. That's not an uncommon theme. And,
no,
it reminds me.
But is it her love for Heracles that she's talking about, or is it Heracles? I don't know, libido or love for Eiole that she's talking about.
I mean, she says in some ways she's almost obnoxiously compliant.
Yes.
She says things along the lines, well, I'm not the young beauty I once was, and Heracles is going to Heracles. And
is that believable?
I can't really blame him.
Right.
So is she up to something, or is she that much of a doormat? It's difficult. But so it's not long after that speech that Likas kind of speaks and says, okay, listen, the messenger was right. This woman is Eiole. It was Heracles' love/lust for her that kind of caused this all to kind of go down. Mm-hmm. And even after that, if we look at page 86 from our translation, even after all of that, Deanira expresses pity and remorse for these captive women. Yeah. It struck me as, to compare Euripides, she has the opposite reaction of Medea.
Right.
And so you would think that Eiole would be a target for her vengeance. Like, I can't get back at, kind of like Hera, I can't get back at Zeus, I'm going to go after the love interest.
Right.
So I can't get back at Heracles, so I'm going to go after Eiole. But she doesn't this, and so
unlike Medea, you're saying in the Euripidean play, who goes after Glauce, right? The princess, the daughter of the king of Corinth, and hates her with a passion.
Right.
Can we read the production notes here right before Deianira's speech to the chorus?
Yes.
Because I think this is a really interesting note.
Yes. Enter Deianira through the great doors carrying a box.
Hold on there.
Yes.
Carrying
a box.
Right. What's in the box?
What's the box?
It's not chocolates.
No, it's this robe.
Yes.
That ultimately will prove to be the demise of Heracles.
And the robe has some kind of special aerosol on it, right?
Right, exactly.
Aerosolized blood of the centaur. Now, this gets complicated.
Yes.
Is there something dangerous about centaur's blood?
Well, it's centaur's blood that has the Hydra's poison coursing through it.
Right. So in the backstory, which I think the audience probably knows, Deianira was being stolen away by Nessus, a centaur, and never trust a centaur because they're wicked, right? And as she's being carried across the river, Hercules, the guy who apparently can't shoot straight, according to Eurytus, pulls his bow and nails Nessus from a distance.
Yes,
but of course the arrows have the poison blood of the Hydra on them, and this is what brings down Nessus.
Exactly.
So then in Nessus's dying speech, which is recorded here, right? He says words to the effect that, "Here, take this garment mixed in my blood, and it will have a magical impact on your husband."
Right. And so this is what she's kind of following through here.
Right.
As she has rubbed this ointment onto this robe, thinking, or maybe not, thinking that this will be a kind of love charm that will keep Heracles loyal to her forever.
And redirect his passion away from Eiole.
Exactly.
And back to her. So should she have done that?
Well, this is what I think that for an actress playing Deianira, it would be such a wonderful role because you could take it one of two ways.
Do you have any suggestions of who would
play
fill
Deianira?
that role?
That's an excellent idea. Man, I'd have to think about this.
An older Anne Hathaway, maybe?
I'm not a big fan of Anne Hathaway.
You don't like her? I think she's a pretty good actress.
I don't know if she could pull this one off.
Okay.
I think a number of years ago, Helen Mirren would be great here.
I think that she's probably a little too old for that
That's
now.
why I said back in the day, right?
Okay.
But
Dame Maggie Smith?
Maggie Smith at around age 40 could pull this. A great British actress.
So she needs to be British.
No, that's kind of a default one. Actually, when I picture these kinds of things.
Interesting.
She presents this as, well, and this is all terrible that my husband's interested in this other woman, but I've got this wonderful ace up my sleeve.
Right.
I've got this robe.
I've got this box filled with this magical robe.
But if you interpret it from the fact that this is kind of her plan for revenge, then she's, by saying these things to the chorus, it also kind of her pity for the captive women.
Yeah.
Is this all to kind of set up a plausible deniability, right? Is she just kind of setting up her own wide-eyed innocence? How innocent is Deianira? I think that's the most fascinating question of the play.
It is.
Yep.
I think we'd have to get Dateline in here to sort this out.
You think Keith Morrison could get to the bottom of this?
So what does Deianira say?
Pesky poisoned robe. So she says, "Dear friends," talking to the chorus, "that noise inside is our visitor saying goodbye to the girls who were captured at Spear Point. This gives me a chance to speak to you in secret. I want to explain what I have contrived to do, and also to share my sorrow with you. That young maiden," that's she's talking about
she's
Eiole?
Eiole.
Yeah. Well, she's not that anymore.
So that's kind of a snide thing to say, isn't it?
She's been yoked. I received her like a package from the sea, and she's a cargo that wrecks my heart and mind. Yeah, it's kind of a.
So this makes me think. I don't think Deianira is quite as innocent as she lets on.
No, maybe not, because that's really kind of a backhanded.
It is
compliment.
It is a reference to her tryst with Heracles, and it's bitter.
Yes. Here we are, two of us, and we are going to be embraced under one single blanket. That's what Heracles, although they say he's loyal and good to me, sends me in return for keeping his house all this time. So that's seething with bitterness.
It's very, very clear here. And I'm not saying that she is unjustified in her feelings. I'm just saying that this expression of her feelings suggests to me that she's not innocent.
Right. Pick it up there, because then suddenly it turns.
Although they say he's loyal and good to me, this is what he sends me in return for keeping his house all this time. I know enough not to be angry at him. He's caught this same disease often enough before. But to live together with this woman, who in the world would put up with that? Who'd share her own marriage? I can see that the bloom of youth is creeping over her while it's withering on me. His roving eye wants to pluck flowers while they're just opening and run from the ones that are fading. So that's my fear. Heracles may be called my loyal husband, but in truth he'll belong to her. I could be angry, but no, that's not appropriate for a woman with a high-class mind. Let me explain how I have turned my pain into a relief.
And that's where she goes on to talk about what she did with this robe, and we get the backstory with Nessa.
That's right.
Now, as we're reading this aloud,
your mind is changing, isn't it?
I am seeing her as much less innocent.
Yeah.
Because she says these words that are steeped with bitterness, and then she'll kind of catch herself. Well, but of course I can't be angry.
Yeah.
Or it wouldn't be appropriate for somebody of my status.
It's a mix of things.
It is.
And one of the interesting mixes is that it seems as though she's saying, obviously I ought to overlook any kind of dalliance, for lack of a better term.
Yes.
Right? I'm not diminishing the seriousness of any kind of marital infidelity. But she seems to be saying if he just had a dalliance with some girl, that's going to happen.
Yes.
But to make her his wife and to actually threaten our home, is how I read it, that's a completely different matter. Nobody would live with that or put up with that.
Right, exactly.
But the part about she's a high-class woman, so the higher you are on the social scale, the more tolerant you're supposed to be of this kind of infidelity?
I guess so. Is that's the right of kings to kind of do what they want.
I guess, and Heracles is in that mold.
Right. So then she gives the robe in a box to Likas, makes him swear.
But let's get a little bit of what she says about her plot there on page 87.
Yeah, keep reading there.
Okay. Well, she says, I have had a gift for a very long time. An old monster gave it to me. So isn't that a place to stop?
Yeah.
Can anything good come from a monster?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. It would be interesting to see what the Greek is there.
And she says, and I have kept it well hidden in a bronze urn. I was still only a girl when I collected it, blood from the wounds of hairy-chested Nessus.
Okay, I didn't need to know about the chest. But yeah.
As he lay dying, he used to carry folks across a deep torrential river, the Evenus, charging a fee and using his own arms. No boating across by oar or sail for him. He took me across when my father sent me off with Heracles to follow him as his bride. I was riding there on Nessus's shoulders in the middle of the crossing when he touched me with his hands where he shouldn't. I let out a screech. Heracles turned right around and shot him with a feathered arrow. It plunged into his breast and on into his lungs. As he was dying, the monster said all this to me, child of old Oeneus, because you are my last passenger, you shall have this benefit from my crossings if you do as I say. That's kind of odd, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just because she's the last, you win the prize.
Right, exactly. She's like the 1 millionth customer.
Exactly. I don't see it.
Yeah.
Collect the clotted blood from my wound with your hands, from where the poisoned arrow struck. It had been dipped in the Hydra's blood. Use this as a charm on the mind of Heracles, so he will never see a woman he loves more than you. I remember this, my friends. I kept it at home, locked carefully away since the time he died. So she knows that this is kryptonite, so to speak. The Hydra's blood is kryptonite.
Right. I mean, is that business that she? Well, no. She knows this.
Is she that dense?
I don't. Maybe because she was already kind of married to a monster. That
You're saying Heracles is a monster?
No, the river god.
Oh,
right?
Archelos.
Right. So that's all she's ever known. She's maybe suffering some kind of PTSD in an abusive relationship.
Okay.
And so she is. I mean, from the outside, she looks naive, but when we consider her situation, maybe it's more understandable.
What about the next thing that she says here? It's a clear indication that she's contemplating a crime, don't you think? Lines 5, 80, and 81 in the translation.
She says, I rubbed this robe in it and did everything else as he instructed me before he died, and now it's all done. I wouldn't ever want to know how to commit a crime or learn to dare to do such things, and I despise people who are bold enough for that.
That's a real tell, isn't it?
That is a bit of a tell, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So she says,
I'm not going to commit a crime.
Right. But
what crime?
She's also saying that something might be up here.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I'm loving how this play kind of pulls you in these two directions.
Quite opposite directions.
Right.
I think what we were saying earlier about the confusing nature of the oracles, Siegel didn't really convince me that that's a strength of the play. Maybe there's something I'm missing, however. If I could just connect Deianira's character, maybe I just need to read it again or more closely, Deianira's character to the confused and diverse nature of the oracular revelation, maybe I could appreciate it more.
Yeah.
Perhaps it's not fair to hold it to the standard of the Oedipus Rex.
Yeah, exactly. Most things are gonna fall by comparison. Yeah, no, that's a tough question. So just a few pages later, after she sent the box off with Lycos and given him very specific instructions, she says, you open it, don't let anybody else wear it. He's got to wear it right away, and preferably at a sacrifice of bulls.
Because she doesn't want someone else falling in love with her?
Yeah, well,
is that it?
Or
she knows it's going to kill whoever.
Or was it?
Whoever puts it on.
Right.
I'm convinced it's a cardigan, actually, to go back to what we were talking about before.
Yes.
The garment. I think Nessus was wearing a cardigan.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why Hercules shot him.
It gets chilly crossing that river again.
I think it does. The millionth time, right? So...
Well, then within a few pages, Deianira speaks to the chorus again. This is the top of page 91, where she says, "Friends, I am so afraid. I may have gone too far in all those things I did a few minutes ago." "What is it, Deianira, daughter of Oeneus?" "I don't know. I'm losing heart. I may have done something terrible. If it turns out that way, it was only because I hoped so much."
Yeah, but what did she hope for? That she would win back his love, or that it would kill him?
Right. It's this really kind of quick turnaround that it makes it very suspicious. Yes. Or it's just bad writing or bad plotting.
Have you heard of Survey Monkey?
I know what that. Yes, I have heard of Survey Monkey.
It's an old, maybe it's not old anymore. It's an email-based thing where you can send people surveys and they'll reply and tell you, right?
Yeah, right.
It's kind of poorly named, I would say. But I wish we could run a Survey Monkey on all classicists or all readers of the Trachiniae, the women of Trachis, and ask them, Deianira, innocent dupe?
Yes.
Or...
Machiavellian
murderess. Right. Those are your options. And I wonder what they would come back with.
That'd be really interesting.
Because I was more on the innocent side, but now I'm veering strongly to murderess.
Me too. Especially as we're reading this aloud.
Right.
This strikes me as much more plotted.
Yes. Right? Well, as we start to run out of time.
Yeah.
Jeff, and the Dateline folks want to get in here to film their next episode.
That is true, right?
Or do they? We need to get on to the actual death of Heracles, and his heroic conclusion.
Yes. So, of course, we learn Heracles has put on the robe.
Yes.
And the nurse comes in. And, well, actually, no. The Hylas comes in.
Yes, the
sun comes in.
Whom I've been calling Hylas all along. I don't know, but it's
Hylas.
It's an upsilon with a couple of lambdas, an omicron, and a sigma. We'll just say that.
Right. But so he comes in, and he says, "Father is basically dead,
right?
And it's your fault."
He says this to Deianira. What page is this now?
We are on 93.
93
and following. Yes. So,
and as you're looking for the reference there, Jeff, I want to ask: have you ever put on a garment that you regretted?
Oh, pretty much every morning.
Really?
I look in the mirror. I say, "What am I thinking?" Right?
But none with these kinds of consequences. But
I do remember one Christmas.
Yes,
where there was
a gift exchange.
Extended family member who was notorious for just giving just horrible gifts.
Oh no!
And I remember opening up a package, and it was like this brown velour sweater.
Oh no!
And my brother was sitting next to me. He just burst out laughing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's tough.
Right.
That's tough.
So, but in that case, that was something that was a garment that I actually never ended up putting on. But how about you? You have some regrettable?
Oh, lots of things. There's the Jim Gaffigan, he has that great bit about my closet is just a curated collection of failed weight loss. Something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I think that in the hands of an Aristophanes or maybe a Menander or maybe better yet, a Plautus, because, Menander and Diphilus, they were too serious, I would say, in their comedy. They're always teaching morals.
Yeah,
where's the absurdity?
Exactly.
But Plautus would have played this for just endless laughs.
Endless laughs, right.
I think that there could really be something here in terms of a mashup or a one-off where they're passing around the garment and no one wants to put it on.
Right.
Because they all have a like a hot potato.
Exactly, or a white elephant exchange where you keep kind of giving that one away to get something else, right?
Nasty Christmas, Yankee Christmas.
Yankee Christmas, yeah, right. Exactly. So on page 93, so Hylas comes up to confront his mother, and he says to her, "Mother, there are only 3 things I could wish for you now: to be dead, or if you stay alive, to be anyone else's mother than my own, or that you'd exchange your mind for something better than the one you have now." It's harsh.
So he's no Telemachus.
Mm-hmm.
The harshest thing Telemachus says to Penelope is something along the lines of, "This is men's work."
Yeah.
Right. Mom, you go upstairs.
Yes.
I'll take care of it. And I think even in the Odyssey, that's played for laughs a little bit because although he's coming of age, he's still just a kid.
He's still a kid and very much a mama's boy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Penelope has been fighting this battle single-handedly for 18 years.
Right.
So I think there's more than a little dramatic irony in her being told by him,
right.
"I got this." Oh, okay. Telemachus.
You can almost see her kind of smirking.
Exactly.
Exactly.
I'll just go upstairs and you take it up from here.
Right.
So Hylas is no Telemachus.
Right.
But apparently he thinks that she's guilty as sin.
Right. He comes out absolutely guns blazing.
"I wish you were dead."
Right.
Or what? That you were not my mother? Or that you had a different brain than the one you've been using?
Yes. Right. And so he sees this all as a dastardly plan that
right.
her mother put into action, has carried out, and
right.
and he's horrified by this. And then we get these gruesome details as Heracles is dying. Well, that reminded me of
yes,
corollaries in other tragedies.
Of course, the Medea, where Glauce's melting alive.
Right. When
she puts on the garment that Medea gave her.
Right. And it also reminded me of Io in Prometheus Bound and Philoctetes, where they they go back and forth between kind of moments of lucidity and excruciating pain.
That's right.
Right.
He's the master of the macabre.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Or the macabre, as it were.
And so then Deianira, she leaves the play.
Right.
The nurse comes in and announces that
that's it.
She's killed herself. Right. And so I one of the things that the first time I read this play, I'm wondering, okay, the idea that to be a Sophoclean hero or heroine, you learn too late, right? You suffer into truth, pathon mathon,
right?
And so what is this going to be Deianira? But to pathon mathon, you have to be alive at the end of the play, right? So she's gone, she's dead.
To learn, you have to be alive,
right? And so if you use that as your measurement,
right?
Heracles dies without really. He doesn't accept. He's not convinced by his son that mom's actually innocent. So Hylas comes around. He comes around and tries to, before Heracles dies, says, "Listen, no, mom did this unknowingly."
So the weakest character, the youngest, weakest character in the play, the least sympathetic, is the one that believes in her innocence.
Yes.
But the other characters in the play either believe in her guilt, or in the case of Deianira, she's dead, so we don't really know what she thinks.
Right. That's left open.
Convenient.
So, it is convenient. So why does she kill herself? Is she overwhelmed with guilt because somebody figured out her plot?
Oh, it's more likely she does it to escape punishment.
Yeah. Right. So even if she's innocent, she's going to have to pay for this anyway.
Right. We need to add that to the Survey Monkey.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, but she's this woman who's been at the center of this play is just suddenly gone.
Right.
Right. And then Heracles kind of dies in this drawn out agony.
However, I would like to note on page 99 that when Deianira takes her life, she does so with a sword.
Yes.
Now, we don't have the time to go into this, but this is much more like Dido, right, in Aeneid Book 4, than it is like your typical Sophoclean heroine who dies by hanging
herself, right?
Namely Jocasta, right? Or Phaedra in Euripides' Hippolytus.
Yeah.
So I do think that the Greeks would have distinguished between the way that someone dies.
Totally. No, I think
so to die by a sword is a heroic, it's a manly kind of thing to do, for lack of a better term.
Indeed. No, I think that's a really important point. And especially if you go and you contrast with Heracles, a big part of his complaint at the end is that look at how I'm going out.
Yeah.
This is no way for a hero to die,
right.
at the hands of a wily woman.
He should be shot down in a blaze of glory.
Exactly.
He should go out but know the truth.
Yes, right. I mean, in some ways, it puts him in good company if you think about how Jason dies, the piece of the boat falls on his head.
It's comic.
Theseus is pushed off a mountain.
Right.
Achilles even shot in the heel by the coward Paris.
Aegeus jumps into the ocean.
Right. It's not uncommon. Right. I mean, if Heracles knew his mythology, he'd know that he's probably going to go out in this ignominious kind of way.
Yes.
But Deianira, killing herself with a sword, I think we're meant to contrast it with kind of the really pathetic end of Heracles.
Right.
Yeah.
Someday when we go back to the many Ovidian vignettes, one of the things I love about Ovid is the absurdity of some of the deaths that he records in the big battle scenes, right?
Oh, yeah.
Someone gets clocked over the head with a leg from a chair, right? Or a goblet or a Tupperware gets closed around him, something like that.
Exactly.
It's all meant to be absurd, but not Deianira. She has, I guess, in some sense, a heroic death.
Yes. Now, at the very end, and I want to get your take on this, are we meant to see as a small sliver of a happy ending here is where Heracles is about to go out and he calls his son next to him and says, listen, Eiole, the plan was I was going to marry her, but since I'm not going to be around.
She's yours now?
She's yours now. Is that, I mean, is it just creepy or is it?
I found it creepy.
I found it creepy too, but I was wondering, did Sophocles intend for his audience to say, okay, here's a little bit of a good that can come out of this?
I don't know. I'm hesitant to try to venture any opinion on that because here I do think that some standards of marital norms might be quite different for them than they are for us.
Right.
I think that we have a strong, strong reaction against people of quite different ages marrying.
Yes.
And I don't think that was the case necessarily in antiquity.
Right.
In the same way.
Right.
What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think I put a lot in how Hyllus reacts. Right?
Okay.
He doesn't say, yes, father, I'm going to agree to your dying wish. This is at the bottom of page 113, where after Heracles proposes this,
he says, I have a great idea. I'm dead, but you marry her.
But you marry, right? So Hyllus says, how horrible. It's a bad thing to provoke a sick man to anger, but who could bear to see him planning this?
Yeah.
You're wailing like a man who won't do what I ask. Who would do it? She's the only one who caused my mother's death. And yours, really. Who would want this done if he weren't crazed with sickness? It would be better for me to die, father, than live in marriage with our own worst enemy.
Yes.
So here he almost shifts the blame to Eiole for all of this.
I don't know. Well, yes. But I thought that speech was really interesting because he acts in a heroic fashion. There's nothing here about passion. There's nothing here about sex or desire.
Yeah.
Which was the very thing that drove Heracles to this terrible end.
True.
Right?
True. Yes. Right.
So Hyllus is in a sense more noble than his father.
Yeah.
That, Eiole is not responsible for it.
Yeah.
But he doesn't talk in a lascivious fashion or anything.
No,
like
that's very, very true. Right. And then ultimately he calms down and he says, if this is your, dad, if this really is your dying wish, and you can promise me that this is right and that this is what the gods want, then I will do it.
Yeah.
And so Heracles says, yes, that's what I'm saying. And Hyllus kind of grudgingly says, okay. Right.
So let's read, if we could, just the very last bit of the play, and then we'll wrap it up.
All right.
So Heracles' last speech. This is page 115 of the translation. How about I'll read Heracles and you read Hyllus?
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yep.
I think I've been hitting the gym a little more than you recently, so only a little. Heracles says, come now, before you stir up this pain again. O my sturdy soul, put a brace of steel to my lips, like a clamp to bind stones, and hold back their cries. This is cause for joy, this final, though unchosen, achievement.
And Hyllus responds, lift him up, my friends, and grant me for doing this great compassion, and also see the great ruthlessness of the gods in these actions. They sow children, we honor them as our fathers, and if they still watch so much suffering. What is to come is not for anyone to see, but what stands now is pitiful for us and shameful for them, but most harsh for him of all men, the one who bears this rage. Do not leave this home, young woman. You have seen majesty in death and novelty, much suffering, and suffering in new forms, and nothing in this is not Zeus.
Mm-hmm.
That ends on a fairly harsh note.
It does.
Yep.
So, of course, he's referring to his promise to his father that he would end his life, right? By putting him into the fire and allowing all of Heracles' mortal substance to burn off.
Right.
So that he could become a god in the next life.
Exactly.
And of course, as we know from other accounts, when he gets to the next life, he takes another wife.
He does. Yeah.
Remember?
Hebe. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who is a relative of his, as it turns out.
And we also know from other traditions is that it's not Hylas who lights the pyre, it's Philoctetes.
Yes.
So there too, it's open-ended. Is Sophocles dealing with another tradition?
Right.
Or it wouldn't honestly say, well, we know Hylas doesn't end up actually doing this anyway.
Right. It's an innovation, maybe.
Yeah, could be.
But it's very good, I think, the last lines of the play. Much suffering, like you said, in new forms. And nothing in this
is not Zeus.
In other words, he's the author of all of it.
All of this pain. Yep.
So the strong belief in a kind of a monotheistic providence that ends the play.
Yeah.
That's bracing.
Very, very bracing. Hey, I really ended up enjoying this play a lot more than I was expecting to.
Yes.
Yep. I thought it was going to be we were going to be mocking it because we're going to see obviously why nobody stages this, but
is that kind of our MO?
Sometimes it is.
Yeah.
We can be a little bit flippant.
Really?
But I came around. I would love to see this play staged.
Okay. Maybe we do a 2-man performance.
Well, I really want to see. I want to see a top shelf actress playing Deianira.
Okay. So not Anne Hathaway.
No.
But Helen Mirren maybe
in her day.
Yep.
Yes.
Is there no one else?
There's got to be. I'm kind of frozen. I'm on the spot. I'm blanking.
Who was in Frozen?
I'm frozen.
Oh, Kristen Bell, is that?
I don't think she could pull it off.
There are a bunch of Kristens. I'm losing track of all of them.
There's a Kristen Bell. But,
okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, someone should stage it, and we would go see it.
Yep.
Wouldn't we? Like an ad nauseum field trip.
Yes.
To watch the women of Trachis.
Exactly. But Dave, we got to get out of here because the folks at Dateline.
That's right.
As you said earlier, they're beating down the door.
They want to get in here.
Keith's got to get in here and set up and do all his makeup and
that's right.
So
practice the voice and so forth.
Exactly. Right. But before we get out of here, Dave,
yes,
I'm sure there are some people out there who would love to learn some Latin and learn some Greek, and you can help them.
I would like to help them very much. In fact, this is being recorded. Sad thing to say, on St. Patrick's Day, and we're running a St. Patty's special one-day sale.
Oh.
But they're not going to get that coupon because it's not coming out yet. But we have another coupon, and that is the coupon 10+. So 10+ will get you 10% off anything on the site. So what is on the site? Well, we have a number of courses, which we call master classes. If you want to read Erasmus, you want to read some Calvin, some Beza, some Cicero, we got those 4 authors. And this is an inexpensive way to try your hand at some advanced Latin. So if you purchase the course, you see me teaching other students. You get the materials, the transcript, and all the instruction, but you don't have the pressure of being called upon in class or needing to answer a lot of grammatical questions. My motto is make America parse again.
Yes, excellent.
I want people out there parsing. I want them learning how to identify Greek verbs and nouns and Latin adjectives and prepositions and conjunctions and do all that, but I want them to have fun and to read actual stories in the process.
Fantastic.
So go to latinperdiem.com, check out my Greek courses, check out my Latin courses. I have the Moss method, and we also use Hans Orberg's great book. I was tallying up the other day how many students I have. I think we've gotten to something like over 300 students now in the last few years learning Greek and Latin with yours truly. As I like to say, it may not be the best program overall. There's probably better teachers. There certainly are better scholars. I do think it's the best value in terms of what you get for what you pay.
Fantastic. And we should mention that not much time left, but there's a bit of time to get involved in the drawing for a brand new Ratio 4 being shipped to your door. So all you got to do is to write to Dave at oddnauseam.com. Don't forget that V in there. And write in the secret code word, which is quatuor.
That's right. They got that secret code word, which is the Latin word for 4. I'm truly impressed, Jeff, by how many people have been able to spell this correctly.
Well, good. We have spelled it for them on the air.
Oh, that's true.
They're paying attention.
But I have great confidence in our listeners. Quattuor. And your name will be entered in the drawing to win a brand new, absolutely free Ratio 4 delivered to your door, so you can brew up your own delicious coffee. When is the drawing, Jeff?
The drawing is March 26th, which I believe is a Wednesday.
Okay.
Yep.
March 26th, we're going to draw the name of the lucky winner, and they're going to be able to get one. Jeff, whom do we need to thank?
As always, Mishka, our wonderful engineer. Such a quick, professional turnaround every single time. Big thanks to her. Scott Vinzen and Ken Tamplin, they're the guys behind the wonderful bumper music. And,
That's right.
The music at the top of the episode.
The intro and outro, the arpeggiated brilliance on the guitar.
Yep, so thankful to these guys for letting us use their music so generously. Hey, you want to write to us? You want a shout out? You got an idea, a complaint, a correction?
Ooh, a correction.
You can write to Dave at adnauseam.com, or you can write to me,
Jeff at adnauseam.com.
Yep.
Do not forget the V. We have some great guests coming up, including a colleague who's going to talk about Tacitus. We got contacted by a couple of fantastic novelists. One of them is coming down the pipe pretty soon here. And so some good things in store. Jeff, what are we talking about next week?
Next week we have one of these interviews, right?
That's right.
We're interviewing Bram Tenberg from Hope College, who's going to talk about Tacitus.
The silent one in Latin prose.
Exactly. So I'm looking forward to that.
So am I.
And I believe I think I have the gustatory parting shot.
You do have the gustatory parting shot, and
yes.
This is from what?
This is from the title track of one of my favorite albums of all time, Breakfast in America by Supertramp. Came out in 1979 or 80.
That's rock and roll, isn't it?
It's kind of kind of proggy, rocky.
Okay, all right, lay it on us.
And this is from the track Breakfast in America. Can we have kippers for breakfast? Mummy dear, they gotta have them in Texas because everyone's in it.
Nice. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.